Hi everyone, I'm Riley. Me and Jackie will be doing our presentation about social cultural theory by Lev Vygotsky. I hope you enjoy. So, who was Lev Vygotsky? He was a Russian psychologist whose work transformed the understanding of cognitive development. He believed that learning first occurs through interactions with others before becoming internalized. Vygotsky put an importance on parents, teachers, peers, and culture when it came to the development of a child. In a report done by Scott and Prensentation, it was explained that social cultural theory views mental functioning as closely connected to cultural, institutional, and historical contexts, with an emphasis on the fact that development cannot be understood apart from the environment in which it occurs. One of Vygotsky's most recognized statements from this article that I was reading summarized this perspective as the social dimension of consciousness is primarily in time and in fact. This quote highlights the idea that learning begins through relationships before becoming part of an individual's own thinking. So the development of social cultural theory is what I'd like to talk about next. So Vygotsky developed social cultural theory during the 1920s and 1930s before he had later died in around 1934 during the Soviet Union. Vygotsky challenged the assumption that children had to mature biologically before they could learn new concepts, which was something that was widely believed by many psychologists during his time. He believed that learning itself stimulates development when children receive guidance from more experienced individuals. He believed that learning and development were constantly influencing each other. Scott and Ponsar also explained that learning creates opportunities for developmental growth by exposing individuals to experiences that they cannot accomplish by themselves. So today these ideas widely influence modern education as well as the field of counseling. The main core belief in Vygotsky's theory is that social interaction helps promote cognitive development and that it can't be done just through biology, it has to be done through experiences as well, and the social environment that a kid is in has a direct impact on our cognitive development. Next, I'd like to look at a couple of major concepts of this theory. So Vygotsky believed that cognitive development begins through social interaction. It's one of the main core things that we just mentioned earlier. He says that children do this through observation, asking questions, participating in different conversations with adults, peers, those around them, as well as the influences that they get from different experiences that they're in. These interactions over time become part of their individual thinking and problem-solving abilities. So these experiences that they go through and these observations that they make, whether it's a mathematical problem that they're getting guided on solving or learning how to say hello, these things are all observed, they're all taught by those that they're interacting with in their environment, and it allows them to develop these processes that we have like language or being able to do mathematical problems or anything like that regard. So speaking of language, Vygotsky thinks that it's one of the most important tools for cognitive development. This is because it allows for individuals to communicate as well as organize thoughts, and eventually it can help them to regulate their own behavior. These ideas emphasize the fact that development is not solely the result of biological maturation, but that it is influenced by relationships as well as cultural experiences. So also in that same article I've been talking about, Vygotsky's genetic law of development was mentioned and highlighted, and this helps to explain that higher mental functioning develops first between people and then later within the individual. So first, the interactions, the relationships that you're building with your parents, with your peers, can later grow into how you think, how the different beliefs that you have, all of those different cognitive processes that you have developed later in life and that shape who you are. Next, I'd like to talk about the zone of proximal development. This is one of Vygotsky's best known concepts when it comes to social-cultural theory. It kind of represents the difference between what an individual can accomplish by themselves as well as what they can accomplish with the help from a more experienced person. So instead of assigning tasks that are too easy or too difficult for a person to achieve by themselves, Vygotsky believed that learning should occur within a zone, allowing for guidance to help individuals stretch their current abilities. So in the diagram that I put in there, you have the little picture of the kid, and then so the first little area shows what you can do by yourself, kind of having that little bar set. Next, in the little dotted area that's showing your zone of proximal development. This is what you can do and what you can achieve with some help. So this is like you're having a teacher that's helping, guiding you, giving you hints during for like how to solve a problem. Slowly that can increase, and slowly that guidance will gradually decrease with and allow you to have that zone of proximal development kind of shift up with as you're learning how to do something. So that other arrow, that solid part of the arrow, this is what is beyond your reach, even with the support, with the hints, with the encouragement, with the guidance that you might have from a teacher. It's just beyond your capability at this point. So this zone of proximal development is kind of what Vygotsky says is what we should be striving when we're either teaching or helping somebody learn a new skill, a new concept. This is kind of the area that we should be striving for when we're helping our children or helping anyone that we're in a mentor or teacher position with. So don't give them things that are, that they might be way out of their reach, but don't give them things that are way too easy for them and aren't going to help them develop and learn more skills. So this is kind of that sweet spot, is what Vygotsky believed is allows for us to continually develop, to be able to develop cognitively as well as just in general. Next, I'd like to talk about the more knowledgeable other. This concept is something that Vygotsky also ties hand in hand with that zone of proximal development, as well as scaffolding, which wasn't a thing that Vygotsky originally came up with, but this is something that researchers and people that have studied his theory have tied into social cultural theory and believe that is directly goes hand in hand with his theory and how he believes that we develop cognitively. So when looking at the more knowledgeable other, this can be people like teachers, like parents, like mentors, can be peers or counselors. It is just anyone that has a greater knowledge or experience than the individual that they're providing guidance and help to. So like a teacher who's like a science teacher, who they're being able to teach and guide the students that they have into being able to learn those new skills, new concepts that they're teaching, as well as like a parent who's teaching us or teaching their kids how to either fold laundry for the first time or how to cook a certain meal. These are just, those people are like considered the more knowledgeable other. Assistance that is provided by the more knowledgeable other is known as scaffolding. So again, not something that Vygotsky had termed himself, but is a very prevalent thing that we see with social cultural theory and how it's developed. It is the temporary support for that learner that gradually reduces as the learner gains more confidence and competence on the skill or concept that they're learning. So in an article that I read by Ahmed, he explains that scaffolding helps individuals more through the zone of proximal development by providing enough support to promote success without creating a dependency. We're not having these children or these people or these learners that we have feel like they have to be dependent and feel like they aren't going to be able to do things without us. We're giving them just enough push to be able to feel, okay, I can understand this now. I can try to do this myself and be able to have that confidence and growth to be able to go to a higher level of understanding. So, social cultural theory has significant implications for counseling since clients develop within relationships in social environments. The therapeutic relationship that we as counselors have with our clients is very important for our clients to be able to feel like the confidence, feel the trust, to be able to listen to us, as well as to be able to have that guidance and feel like they can become independent without us. And that's a very important thing that Vygotsky puts an emphasis on, that helps our clients be able to learn and grow without feeling like they have to be in counseling for the rest of their lives, because that's the last thing we want, is for somebody to have to feel like they have to be stuck in counseling and not be able to grow without us. So Holtzman, in an article, she argues that counseling itself can become a developmental process rather than simply a method of reducing symptoms. So the counselor serves as a guide who collaborates with the client to develop new ways of thinking and responding to changes. The counselor can help the client build skills rather than solving problems for them. This theory of development can work well with strengths-based counseling as well, because counselors can help clients to identify their strengths and their abilities, as well as supporting gradual growth rather than focusing on the negative things or the things that they need to work on, versus you have a knowledge and you have a strong area in this specific subject or this specific development, then we'll focus on that, as well as how we can incorporate that into helping you with your struggles and what you're going through.
Hi, I'm Jackie, and I want to continue talking about the social cultural perspective. When it comes to this theory, applying to the different stages in life, it is different in other theories. Unlike others, Vygotsky did not believe that there was a universal time frame for development and learning, since he believed it varied by person, culture, and environment. But this is applicable still to all ages, since we are continually learning, developing, adapting, and the zone of proximal development continues to apply to us in all of these stages. But it does put more pressure on, teachers, parents, our peers, maybe in us as adults, as far as who we are around with or what we exposed or who we exposed ourselves to, especially considering social media. But the zone of proximal development is going to look different in different cultures. There's going to be different interpretations as far as who's considered a more knowledgeable other, how those more knowledgeable others are going to be assisting us as individuals. So for our clients, it's important for us to consider who their more knowledgeable others are in their lives, how they're learning, how they're adapting, and what effect that has on them. So here, I know Riley already spoke about the zone of proximal development. This is a key concept for Vygotsky, where, in the center you have someone that can do something without any help. The next stage is what someone can do with help. And then at the very outside area is beyond someone's ability. It's just something way too difficult. So we have to remember that in all things, we need, we have a gradual process. We have a gradual process. So when we are doing counseling, we're showing new techniques. We need to be able to keep this in mind. We may have to model. We may have to do role play, practice a couple of times with clients. And then when considering more knowledgeable others besides ourselves at that time, we could see who else they have close to them, what's their support system that can help them move towards the next stage and maybe be able to grow and do more things independently. Here are some examples of what it would seem like when someone is doing something with assistance. We have a child learning to walk. They're practicing balance and taking steps needed in order to learn to walk. So children learn to walk at different rates. And according to this theory, it is due to the assistance of the more knowledgeable others in the child's environment. The caregiver in this case would be considered the more knowledgeable other, and at the same time, their physical assistance is considered scaffolding, a temporary method of assistance that will eventually go away, and then the child will eventually be able to walk on their own without any assistance. Next, we have a picture of these little kids. They're playing with the shapes. There's an older child. The smaller child's, looking at him. Again, they can learn how to, during playtime, they're also learning and being influenced by their peers. And their peers, or this older boy, it could be because he's older, but it could also be because he's been exposed or been taught this. So the children that have not been taught these specific shapes or colors can learn from that. So again, it's not, according to Vygotsky, just a universal time frame for learning. It all has to do with exposure and the environment. At the bottom, we have a teenager learning to drive. Of course, that is something we need assistance. And then eventually he is expected to be on his own. And lastly, I have a picture of these professional adults having a discussion. This could be viewed in our own, field as counselors. Eventually, we're going to need supervision, right, during our internships. And then once we've already been licensed, we may need still feedback, supervision, consultation by more knowledgeable others. So that zone of proximal development, it's simply applicable in all stages of life. Again, there's no rigid stages of development. There's just this constant ongoing need for others around us to help us learn and grow. Lastly, I want to talk about cultural considerations when using this approach. There's going to be differences in who's considered a more knowledgeable other or what scaffolding can look like in each culture, in each household per se. In a sense, technology can be a method of scaffolding when required to access specific information, but yet some people may not have that available. They may have internet, but maybe they don't have their own tablet or their own laptop. So there could be, differences on the resources our clients need in order to help them achieve their goals. Some individuals may have more knowledgeable others than others in their lives, or they may not realize how scaffolding can help them, or that they have scaffolding in their life, that they have some resources. So it's important for us to help them acknowledge some of their strengths, some of the resources they have around them, or help them find new resources to help them achieve their goals. The use of language is different in each household due to culture. In some household, speaking could be reserved to specific people or about specific topics or at specific times. So it's important to also have this in mind when we are working with our clients, that they may be holding back for cultural reasons, or they're not sharing, or they may not feel comfortable journaling and expressing themselves in any way because of cultural understanding that they may have. So it's important to address that. And lastly, the other consideration I have is the individualistic versus collectivistic cultures. They can have a different approach. So for example, collectivistic cultures tend to have more influential people. That means more knowledgeable others at the disposal of some people. So they can have a bigger support group, which is a really good thing. But on the other hand, this can also equal to more problems, more opinions, more pressure on an individual. So it is important to acknowledge that there is an impact nonetheless, and help clients assess their strengths and resources to help them achieve their goals. And that's it for our presentation. I hope you enjoyed it.